Hi, and welcome to Monkey Chatter. We have counted ourselves into this episode, and today's topic is perfectionism. So, this is something I think that we all can relate to, and also doing this podcast is an exercise in letting go of perfectionism. So it has
That's
been
an
a really, really
understatement.
good tool for those of us who tend to be on the perfectionist side of life to learn to let it go. So yeah, we want to kind of open up today, and it's going to be a little freewheeling because this is all based on our personal experience and
When
how we
is it
feel
not
about it.
freewheeling?
Freewheeling, freewheeling.
When did we ever come into this with a script?
Yeah, well, sometimes we plan or we read a book or we read a couple pages of a
Or
book.
don't read a book, as it
Or
may
don't
be.
finish a book.
Oh, wow. We are going to be talking about that forever.
Exactly. And and anybody who listens to us regularly knows too that our perfectionism definitely does not lend to our closing remarks where we try to get our thing together. But so I am definitely a recovering perfectionist. I inherit that honestly from my mother, and I'm getting much, much better at it through tools like, salt caving and meditating and yoga and trying to live more in the moment. And sometimes you just got to say, shuck it like a oyster and not worry about it so much. And we're also talking about how there's like sort of this, we felt like there might have been a trend toward the more natural, less perfectionism, especially with the image of a woman and womanhood. And this kind of all stemmed from a quick conversation we had about this photo shoot article in a magazine called More that was out. What year was that
It
out?
was 2002.
2002. So 22 years ago.
Yeah.
That's math, so you're welcome.
Woot, woot.
And at the time she appeared in a photo shoot and was interviewed with no makeup on, no touching of the photo. She was like in a bra and panties, but it was
We're
very,
talking about Jamie Lee Curtis. I don't know if we actually said her name. Did we say
yeah.
her name?
Oh, did I not say Jamie Lee Curtis?
I don't
I'm
know.
sorry.
Anyway, that's
Yeah,
who we're talking about.
I may
Yeah.
not have. So Jamie Lee Curtis, who I think is, absolutely beautiful. And, she was also like very fit for most of her career and her life. And she's still a very active performer and actress, and she's brilliant. But she did this photo shoot and this interview in 2002, and she did not have any makeup on. They did not retouch her photos at all. And she has like a normal body. She's pretty. She doesn't really need any of that, but that's what everything was doing. So I don't know, Michelle, do you have that quote handy that
I
she
do.
said? Because I feel like
So,
it's such a good thing to open up with.
yeah, we kind of got on this conversation before we started recording because we were talking about AI and the ability to enhance photos. And I was saying I just seen something on LinkedIn where they took somebody's original photo and AI'd it. And back then, I guess they just called it airbrushing. So, so she says that she wanted to stop spreading the myth of perfection. And she said there's a reality to the way I look without my clothes on. I don't have great thighs. It said she goes on and says all the things that are not right with her. And she said it's insidious. Glam Jamie, the perfect Jamie, the great figure, blah, blah, blah. And I don't want the unsuspecting 40-year-old women of the world to think that I've got it going on. It's such a fraud, and I'm the one perpetuating it. And she said that doing this piece for More magazine was a way of making amends, of saying, I'm sorry I made you feel less than. And that just really, really struck me, right? Because, I think, I kind of grew up in that age of fashion magazines. Like, and I loved fashion. Like, I Got Vogue and Bizarre and like hard to believe, I know, because I am not like, if you know me, you would never think that. But I almost majored in fashion and had applied to FIT, and so I mean, I really, thought all of that stuff was so amazing, and I guess I just was really naive and didn't realize for a long time that the folks in the magazines were not real, right? Like that they were airbrushed, and I thought it was all, oh well, just makeup and diet, and you too can look like Jamie Lee Curtis, and
Yeah,
have the hot body.
I totally agree. Like, I used to just think, like, okay, well, they're actresses or models, and they have a full-time chef, and they have a personal trainer, and so of course they look that great. But the reality is, yeah, they might have all those things, but they still don't look as perfect as the pictures
Right.
perpetuate. That's a lot of alliteration.
Well done.
But I mean, that is, and and to stay with the P theme, it's prevalent today.
And I feel
I
like
feel
it's
like we still
almost
see it, even
more.
though, yeah, there's been all this pushback from so many like women's groups and anti-perfectionism people. But yet, think about it, like everywhere you look on Instagram or, all the TikTok videos, and all you see are these filters that make you look,
Mhm.
quote unquote, more beautiful or more like a certain ideal, but they're just AI. It's just fake. Like, you don't really look like that. So it's like we're not really heading in that direction at all.
I'm so confused.
The
Like,
difference is now you don't have to be an actress to
to
get
do
that look.
all, yeah, right? Everybody can filter themselves, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Exactly. So like and this has happened to me with photos, not in the, current, well, in the recent past. Actually, a person I dated several years ago touched up or airbrushed or whatever you want to call it, photoshopped a photo of me and sent it to me, and I was mortified because I was like, that does not look like me.
That is creepy
And I've
as
had
hell.
that happen.
Uh,
And I just would rather, I mean, I don't love photos of myself anyways, but I don't want to look at myself and not recognize me.
yeah.
That just feels off.
And
So,
it kind of all goes back. So, right, the topic today is perfectionism. So, I guess that brings up the question, like, well, that can go in so many directions. We're talking about like physical appearance right now, but so,
right.
I'm sure we'll touch on all the other stuff, but who who gets to decide? Like, who's the decision maker? What is the perfect face? And this has been going on for years, so this is not a new conversation, but I think it kind of starts there with this idea that there is one perfect thing to aspire to, which just sets everybody up for failure. Like, there's no way to be that or do that. So it's just a constant. It's great for people who are selling things that are going to help you, get there.
Supposedly achieve the perfectionist.
Yes,
Yeah.
right? But somebody somewhere is setting up the idea of like the perfect looking. Oh man, we could really have a conversation, right? Because you have the perfect appearance, right? Versus the perfect, like if you're the perfect woman, the things that the perfect woman does, right? If you're the perfect wife or the perfect mother or the perfect, whatever, like all those things. And then of course that gets crazy, right?
Well,
So
yeah, you're right. And I was thinking the exact same thing, is like you can just extrapolate from the visual. So like the
yeah,
perfect face or body, and you
yeah,
can easily, skew that with AI nowadays, or a filter,
yeah.
which I guess is AI. But then you take it one step further, like you said, it's about their perfect life. It's a perfect lifestyle. Like, you see all these photos and you feel less than, like, to use Jamie Lee Curtis's words, if you're table setting for, Friday night dinner,
Thanksgiving or
doesn't look like
Christmas or
something out of a magazine, and thanks, Martha Stewart. Like, you kind of
yeah.
contributed to some of that.
Or
But
even
it's true
okay,
that extends to that home life, that what you
yes.
create at home, you want your home to look a certain way, and
And
you base it on what other
I
people.
want to bring Amy in because the
I
thing
know,
that's
me
popping in
too.
my head is all I can think about is the thing that makes me feel really less than are people who do great meal prep. Like the
Well, it's so
perfect meal
funny
prep.
because
I want to punch those people. Not you, Amy, because I love you, right? But I'm like, you people with the perfect meal prep. I just feel like there's something wrong with me that I can't meal prep. Anyway, Amy,
yeah.
go.
No. Well, and so I'm just getting back up a little bit because the whole like I'm listening to you guys the whole time and I'm like maybe I'm just in a different circle or something. I don't know. Maybe it's
Oh no.
the people that I see online and stuff, but I feel like in the like athletic world, in the sports world and stuff like that, like I feel like a lot of women, in like professional athletes are coming out and saying, "Look, this is what I look like, but look what my body can do." Like
Mhm.
it like they are really starting and I was talking to Michelle about this the other day, but there's a rugby player. She was in the Olympics, like Ilana Mayer or Mar or something like that. I'm gonna butcher her name. Um, but she is she's a big girl. Like I would not mess with her in a dark alley. but,
Or even a
but she's
bright
like,
one. Yeah.
yeah, and like people, make comments about like, how big she is or that she looks like a man, yada yada and all that stuff. She's like, yeah, I am and like I'm a big girl, but I'm going to the Olympics and here's my medal,
Yeah, and
you
she's
know?
a rugby player, so that suits for that
I
job.
just Googled
Yeah.
you. Holy cow.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
I would
mean,
not want to, like, she could take you out.
yeah. But
Wow.
like so she was really big when the Olympics. I saw a lot of her stuff and like a lot of the ultra runners and stuff that I follow. Um it's funny, there's the one and I cannot remember her name right now, but she does a lot of stuff on Instagram where she'll post a picture like side by side and it'll say posted, not posted. Now obviously she's posted them both, but like for people for like like what she feels like some people would post and it always a matter of like what part of the stride you're in and how you're like your side like do you have a little bit of like muffin top coming out over your shorts because you're like leaning that way or whatever, but she's like look, this is it's all real life. So I
Wow.
don't know, maybe it's just the people that I follow, but I feel like there are a lot more people calling BS on all that stuff. Like, nope, this is who I am. This is where I'm at. And it's funny, we were actually just talking before we started recording, but I said that's one thing I really try to do on like on my bit by bit nutrition stuff is like I and maybe to a detriment, I'm a little too honest sometimes because I'll get done after a run. I'll be like, that run sucked. Like I did not want to go. I did not want to get out of bed. It sucked. And I've actually had people reach out and say, thank you for saying that because it makes me not feel like I'm putting words in their mouth, but it makes me not feel like such a loser if I don't want to go for a run or I don't want to go to the gym. Like I kind of joke, some people at the gym joke because I always make the saying of like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And it's, it's not. So I don't know. Again, maybe it's just
No, I think
the
this
circle
is
that
what
I'm
I
in.
think that you've touched on a whole nother part of perfectionism, and I do see what you're seeing, but I also see people who are over the top perfectionism of their performance. So it's like the
Mm.
same thing. Some people are into their looks, some people are into their like home and their lifestyle, and some
Mm.
people are into their performance, their physical performance of some kind. And ultimately there's still a lot of people who are like portraying this perfectionism at some level,
Yeah.
and that is one thing I love about you, Amy, is you do cut through the BS, like with your, what at least what I've seen on your
I don't
social
do
media.
fake.
Like there's nothing fake about you. Like you're like, you know what, it's okay to fall off the wagon and eat a french fry every now and then. Don't beat
For
yourself up
sure.
so much. Nobody's going to be perfect. But
Yeah.
it's really hard. I think it's a mentality, a perfectionism mentality. And it seems to be to me, more women seem to suffer from perfectionism as a problem, if you will. I also see it, and I see this in myself, and I think the number one thing is recognizing it, and you can hopefully work on it. But so I'm one of those people that when I write something, because I write a lot for my marketing and my promotion, and I write things for copy and letters, and I will rewrite something to death, to the point where I am like, okay, this is just a bunch of disjointed words now, because I've gone back in so many times and changed it, or like move this sentence here and cut and paste this word here. And then you read through it and you're like, wait, this is duplicated down here somewhere else. Like, that's my perfectionism, like, hot point is like, I'll read through something I've written like 42 times, and really whoever's receiving it, like a lot of it's from like my website, people aren't reading that shit.
No.
They just aren't doing it. They're looking at the bullet points, if I'm lucky.
Yeah. Too long, didn't read. Yeah. TLDR, isn't that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
TLDR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is something I've seen lately. So this to me speaks of someone who might, and nothing, and this is not a judgment on anybody. I thought it was kind of cute when I saw it the first time. But like, I'll get a text from somebody, and at the very end of the text it says, "Please excuse any typos. I'm using my talk to Siri or whatever."
Talk to text, yeah.
And first of all, I was like, how do I get that on my phone? And second of all, like, okay, that might be you might be worried a little too much about it.
I don't know, after my spelling confession the other week.
Yeah, there we go.
I can't spell. Maybe I need to figure out how to add that to mine too.
Well, and that's another thing. All of us, do some outreach, with whether it's with clients, that we respond to on email or on a website or social media. But it's interesting because, things do get by. Like, I have a newsletter that goes out, or an email, and I will not catch my own typos occasionally, even though I wrote it 52 times. It'll go out, and then I'll read it once it comes in my inbox, and I'll open it, and the first thing I see is a big old typo. And I'll be mortified. But I have worked really hard to say, like, you know what, it's okay. And also, I've read that when you see a typo, it catches your attention. So maybe it's a good grabber.
There you go. So Michelle, getting back to your meal prep.
Yeah,
there are some people, and if that makes you feel less than, then just ignore them, delete them, do whatever.
Like, I'm so beyond that. But yeah, it is one of those things where I'm like, and when I knew we were going to talk about this, I really was trying to, for lack of a better phrase, because I hate this phrase, but really trying to unpack like what being perfect. Because if you were to say to me, hey, Michelle, are you a perfectionist? I'd be like, no, clearly not. Like, there's nothing I try to do and be it just is something I would say no to. However, so it's sort of like the other side of the coin. When you decide before you even do something, like that it won't be good enough, so you just don't bother, right? So not really perfectionism. I'm not sure what bucket that would fall in. I'm way more inclined to do that, right? Be like, yeah, well, it just won't be good enough so like, why bother? And definitely there's perfectionism and a fear that there will be consequences if you don't get it right. Right?
Yeah.
So not so much it has to be perfect, like, oh, I have to make this perfect, but it's like, oh, if I attempt to do this and I don't do it correctly, or it doesn't come out right, somehow this is going to cause me consequences that are going to be bad. So I'm just not going to do it. Right? So, I get a little confused about like, it's easy when you're talking about physical, right? Like the concept of here's the perfect female form, and if you don't meet this, you're worthless, right? So I'm I'm like 60 something. That ship has sailed. Like there's not like it's just but but there are those other two little things that I definitely get caught up with for sure. But I don't know if they fall in that perfectionist bucket or if that's something different. I don't know.
Well, okay. So I did look up the meaning, or
Definition?
there's a definition, and then there's a meaning, and there's like a whole philosophy around it. But so one of the definitions is the refusal to accept any standard short of perfection. And then another one was based more on like the psychology of perfectionism. And this one asked, what is the true meaning of perfectionism? And it's defined as the tendency to place unrealistic demands on yourself and or others. Common traits include fear of failure, self-criticism, obsessive thinking, reassurance seeking, and unattainable goal setting. So, I mean, in a way, like we may have overcome
Yeah.
perfectionism because most of it, all three of us, I think, are well-adjusted, successful people in life.
Are we? But
Don't
are
laugh.
we?
Are we really? Yeah. Like, and what does that really mean? Right. Yeah. So like when you read that second part, right? There are things I'm like, oh yeah, I do that, I do that, I do that. So yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to dig into it a little bit. And
And I
then
think,
yeah, go ahead, Amy.
okay. No, I
No.
was going to say, I feel like for me, it depends on what it is we're talking
Talking
about.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, like, anybody who's been to my house knows that I like vacuum lines.
Yeah.
And things have a place. But I don't know what you call it. Like, my friends in college and my roommate used to like move stuff around, or they would sit on my bed to see if I would notice the wrinkles in my comforter or like that they moved something. But that for me is like, my brain doesn't like,
It wants it.
yes, it wants order.
You
It
might be
wants
a
a spreadsheet.
perfectionist if
Yeah.
But then, like, with other stuff, like food prep, I'm like, I don't care what it looks like. Here it is. It's in a bowl. Like, as long as it, as long as it's healthy, it doesn't. And one of the sayings that I always do when I do food prep is functional, not fancy. Like, just,
yes.
make it functional, not fancy. So like with that sort of stuff, it by far doesn't have to be perfect. But man, somebody walks across our carpet upstairs and I'm like, vacuuming.
Get rid of those footprints.
Yes, exactly. God love the dogs. They've just
Well,
gotten used to the
I know what
vacuum.
you mean. I think some of us do have, if we have perfectionistic tendencies, then we'll pick one or two things that we do have control over, like that.
Yeah.
So I give warm blankets out at the salt cave when people go into a session, because your body temperature drops when you relax and you can get cool. And I have a specific way of folding the blankets because they're like Turkish towels, but they're 100% cotton, and you have to like fold them a certain way and then roll them really tightly, and then they all fit down in the blanket warmer. And I have one or two part-time people who fill in when needed, and this one guy that I have, I love him to death, and he's a massage therapist, one of the most nurturing people I know. And for the life of me, he can't fold the blankets. So I'd be like, let me show you how I do it. It makes it easier. And I'm like, yeah, he's seeing right through that bull. So I was like telling myself, okay, I might notice, and it bothers my perfectionist senses to see the blanket not folded properly or not lined up. The edges weren't meeting, one of those. But does a customer really notice that? No, because when you hand it to them, they're just whoosh, unraveling it.
Doing it anyway.
So I finally just said, let it go. Put it in a bubble and let it go, as my friend Anne always used to say.
In a bubble and let it go. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I'm like like a list checker. Like,
Oh,
yeah, like if I don't know, like if I have a training plan or something, I'm like, okay, check. Monday, check. Tuesday, check. Wednesday, check. Like, so I feel like I'm a list checker that if I don't get what's on the, I don't know. I don't know
yeah.
what
So
that is.
is that a form of perfectionism in that it's not about making the list? Like that's common. A lot of people make lists and check them off. But what if you don't check them off? Does that like ruin your day or your
It
week?
kind of tweaks me a little
Kind
bit.
of. Yeah. So that's I think that's where the perfectionism comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, um, I don't know. But then
And there's
like
the other
other
question.
stuff, I'm
So,
like a hot mess.
yeah, and maybe so that's an interesting thing, Lara, because I didn't go to the next question in my head. Like, so we're so we're presenting it as, and the word, and the understanding is that somehow, or the feeling is that somehow perfectionism is bad, right? Like somehow the pursuit, well,
Well, by
that
definition, it's not healthy.
right?
Yeah,
Not
well,
right? But is it really? Because I'm
I
listening
don't
to
know.
it,
Yeah.
and I'm like, so I heard a quote, because of course, when I knew we were talking about perfectionism, any kind of like you buy a red car and all you see are red cars. So there was a quote in something I was listening to this morning, and it was talking about whoever this person was, their saying was progress over perfection,
Perfection.
right?
Yeah, I've heard that. That's
That's
good.
like,
So,
yeah. I
right?
tell
So I
that
don't
to
know,
nutrition clients all the time.
right?
Yeah.
So I guess the pursuit of perfection isn't a negative unless it stops you from moving forward, right? So definitely I get stuck and get stopped from moving forward, but I never tied it to a desire for perfection, right? Like in my head, I'm like, there is no hope for perfection. Like it doesn't exist. In my world, it's not even a target, right? So, because I'm like, okay, if perfectionism is a problem, what it, but it's the ultimate goal is, I think about riding horses, right? Which is impossible. Maybe that's why I'm one of those people who's like, it just isn't possible. So don't stress over it. Like there is no perfect ride. Like, you look at how events are scored and that kind of, like, it's so virtually impossible to get a perfect score in anything you do with riding, right? Horses will, mess you up 9 times out of 10. So I think about that and I wonder if where that line is, right? So
Well, I get what you're
you know
saying,
what I'm
but I
saying?
also think maybe sometimes horses are going, that rider messes me up every time. I couldn't
Why?
find a thing.
I could do that movement if they would just,
Just let me do my thing.
yeah, stop
Um,
doing that.
so like if I from what I think what you're saying is that perfectionism can be a motivator in some form.
I guess that's the whole idea, is to, so I guess my question is, and this is probably a question for a therapist or somebody, I'll have to ask her, like, hey, what's the deal with this? Like, when does the pursuit of a goal, because I think when you read that definition, that was one of the things that was a problem, right?
Yes, the problem was from what it says, and I'm gonna open it again so I don't get it wrong. The tendency to place unrealistic demands on yourself or others, and ultimately it results in unattainable goal setting.
Right.
So unrealistic and unattainable are the two big words I think that set apart a problem with perfectionism and somebody who, just has a healthy pursuit of excellence.
Better. Right. So I guess I guess it's in how you do, if perfectionism is sort of the unattainable, right? Like
Right.
that nobody can get there. Like it is never going to happen. And your value is tied up in making it happen, then I guess that's where the negative comes in. If it's something that's unattainable and you're going to tie your self-worth to being able to attain it, that's just a recipe for failure,
Yes.
right?
Well,
Yep.
and
And
that's
I do think that's what it's saying. I think that's what the definition is, why it's a problem. Um, and it's probably very prevalent in everything and everything we all do. I mean, like writing, yoga, training, eating, is that there's this unattainable, what we consider like the perfect form or the perfect class or the perfect ride or, you know, the perfect body or whatever. And it's great to want to strive for that, but at the same time, and again, this is a yoga saying, but it's a practice. You're not going to attain anything. It's just a practice. You're attaining the practice of being mindful, of being in your body, of noticing your breath. That's different from saying, like, you know, oh, I'm going to do the perfect downward dog today. It's not the same goal.
that has never been a goal of mine.
Amy's not worried about a perfect
I'm like,
what were you gonna say though,
just
Amy?
gonna.
You started to say something. Do you remember what your thought was?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, you know, and this is something when you talk about like the unattainable goals, and this is something that, you know, you talk to nutrition and fitness people a lot about, like, you know, because people will get into that all or nothing mentality that, like, if you can't eat perfect every single day, or like you have a piece of candy or you do whatever, that like, and then they'll just be like, oh, screw it. Like, no, it's not screw it. Enjoy it. Like, eat an apple next time, sort of thing, you know?
Mm.
Because I think when you get into that all or nothing, like, it has to be perfect and regimented. And I mean, that is a recipe for disaster for like eating disorders and all of that. But that's how, yeah, I would much rather, and again, I think we've talked about this before, but that's why I named my company Bit by Bit, because it's like these small little things that you can continue to improve on. It is the whole progress over perfection versus like this big, you know, everything has to be perfect. And if you eat a piece of Halloween candy or, you know, whatever, that everything is just like coming to an end. And that's just not the case. So, or if your food prep doesn't look like it belongs on Pinterest or,
Right.
you know, whatever it, or, you know, again, you miss a workout or you don't hit the paces on a run or again, whatever it might be. You know, I remember my running coach will always put stuff in there that's like, you know, here are your paces. These don't have to be spot on. Like, you know, the goal is to put forth the effort to try to get there, but they don't have to be spot on. And she would always say, like, I don't want you to hit every single workout, because if you're hitting every single workout, like, I'm not programming right for you.
Mm.
So yeah.
And again, it goes back to practice versus perfection.
Mm-hmm.
There is no perfection, but there is practice that helps you improve and reach attainable goals, not unattainable goals.
So here's a little like, as we're talking about this, my mind sort of went to sort of work, like careers, work, and how unhappy, like, you know, when you see all those surveys about people and their jobs and the hugely high percentage of people who hate their, I don't want to say hate, but are not happy in their employment. Like, it's a ridiculous percentage. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I know it's like higher than 50% of people don't like their jobs. And the thing that popped into my head was, I wonder, because this also has to do with realistic expectations. And it's one thing when you're responsible for setting your own sort of expectations, right? Which is what we're talking about, right? Like progress versus, we can do that with like our downward dog or our meal prep or, you know, our riding lesson or whatever. But when you're in a work environment and you have a boss or someone else who you're trying to do a job, and I would say in a lot of work situations, either one, expectations are not clearly set, or if they are, they're completely unrealistic. And I wonder how much that impacts people's mental health, well-being, whatever, because you're constantly like, you either A, don't know what the expectations are, and then you get slapped for not meeting them, and you're like, well, okay, I thought I was perfect, and clearly I'm not, because you get to do that. Or B, we come from a sales world, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I see this over and over again with salespeople that I work with from multiple companies, where the company just sets these stupid, unrealistic like goals, and you're just like going to work going, all right, yeah, I know that's the number that you picked, but clearly that is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
um
I
I wonder how
totally
much
relate.
that, right, I wonder how much that like gets wrapped up, and if you are a person who tends toward perfectionism, how much does that screw with you, right?
So
If you
here
really want to be perfect, yeah.
and like you said, we all come from sales, and so that like that's a little triggering for me because
Right?
I think because I have some perfectionistic tendencies, I can think of not one, but at least two different employers that I worked for where it was this sort of cycle where if you had a good year, you would get your goals raised for the following year, making it virtually impossible to have another even better year. Like nothing's going to just keep going up all the time in a finite universe. Like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe real estate goes up forever and ever and ever. I don't know. I'm not a real estate salesperson. But when you're selling something to a specific market, yeah, over a 10-year period, it might creep up, but year over year over year over year, it's just not realistic to think that your salesperson is going to exceed their goals every single month, every single quarter, every single year.
Right?
And, there's attrition and then there's things beyond their control or, something gets screwed up. And I even worked for a company where they were like, year end, here you go, put all your accounts on a list, tell us what they're going to spend with you next year. And the first year I was like, okay. And I was really super realistic about it. And I came back and it was like a modest increase, maybe 3 or 4%. And they're like, oh, no, it's got to be at least 8%. I'm like, well, you just told me to do what I thought they'd bring in. This is what I think they'll bring in. So then the next year you go through the whole practice again. It takes forever. You put down the highest number that you feel comfortable with, which is not attainable, because then you won't hit it. And then the next year they'll lower your goals. It's like, it's so unrealistic. It's the exact definition of perfectionism.
Right?
Unattainable.
Like, so that, I think, when I think about why people are unhappy in their work, that was as we're having this conversation, I'm like, man, if you're drawn to that kind of work anyway, you probably are a bit of a perfectionist. You know what I mean? So if you have that little thing in you that wants to get the gold star, right? Do the checklist, right? You want to do all the things, like you want to be good at what you do, and you have that perfectionist bent. The way we go to work in most cases in this country does not really lend itself to a healthy relationship between the two. So anyway, it just struck me like, well, maybe that's why everybody's so miserable, because
Well,
they,
yeah, and burnout. To me,
like,
that equals burnout. And that's
yeah,
why, and I do hear a lot about people feeling burned out and stressed by
yeah,
their jobs. Even if it's a job they enjoy,
right.
there is this sense of burnout. Like, I'm just tired of it.
Yeah.
And I
Anyway,
experienced
I
that
know that
myself
was
too.
like a real like went in a very different
Well, it
like I
was,
didn't
but I
really
loved it.
intend to go
I
that way.
love the direction that you took that because I feel like it fits hand in hand with the whole perfectionism thing.
Yeah.
And okay, so let me push this a little further. How many
Okay.
of you two, how many of you two?
How many of you two?
Is it two of you?
True.
Do you guys feel like you tend to come from a people-pleasing angle? Like, are you people pleasers? And do you think
You go first,
perfectionists
Amy?
are generally people pleasers?
I think. Go ahead, Michelle.
Ah,
Maybe we should answer for each other. That could be funny.
oh, that would be
No.
hard. I would say yes,
Go ahead.
as a growing up, I always, I was really good in school. I always wanted to do the right thing, right? So whatever, my parents did a good job of this is the good thing to do, this is the bad thing to do, there are consequences for your actions, blah blah blah, all that crap, right and wrong. Like I really believed in a black and white world, like growing up. And there were good, if you did the good things, this is why I'm so screwed up now. Like that if you did the good things, got the good grades, showed up on time, worked hard, blah blah blah, that that was how it would work, and it would all work out. So clearly that led me down the path of people pleasing, right? Because our whole culture is set up where in most cases there's somebody above you telling you what you're supposed to do, right? And if you do those things, then you're a good girl. And if you don't do those things, oh, you're not so I probably spent, it was a long time before, I think it was, how old was I? Probably in my late 20s. And I can remember I was managing, I worked for a holodome, which were the big Holiday Inns,
Oh
that
my
had.
gosh. There used
Yep,
to
do
be
you
one of
remember
those in
those?
Kentucky.
Yeah,
Those were
I mean,
fun. I
Those are
remember the one here, and
creepy.
there was one in
yeah,
Lexington. It was super
Yes.
fun.
yeah. I
The
worked in one
game
of
room
those.
in the middle was
Yes.
where the
Oh yeah.
gym was.
Like
And
indoor water park kind of stuff.
I was afraid that like the clowns were gonna come out of the
Like,
arcade and get me in the gym. Like
so way
that's
back, they used to be
creepy.
really cool, and like they would hold like these
That's not
big.
cool.
They had like nightclubs, and anyway, so I was the beverage manager at this big holodome in Tucson, Arizona. I was in my 20s. This was like a big job for somebody like me. I managed the bar, I managed the nightclub, all the things. And I remember we got this general manager. I will not mention his name in case any of his, you never know.
What's
However,
he gonna do? Fire you?
no, I'm sure.
People pleaser.
Yeah, right. Some people,
I mean, I'm not
I can
saying you have to
still
call
see
anybody
him.
out, but
I can still see him to this day. All this to say that was the first. I remember there was something going on that was really stupid between myself and the banquet manager over like ashtrays or some shit. This is how long ago it was. People still smoke. And we're having this argument. And I remember we had to go have a meeting together with this new general manager. And I came out of that meeting, I'm like, that guy is an idiot. And it was the first time that it really struck me that just because people had positions of more power, more money, more whatever than I didn't mean they were smarter or better than I was. Like that was really the first time that hit me. So I was a real people pleaser kind of up until that point when I was like, what am I doing? He's a moron. Like, honestly, he can't even do math. Like, and I just remember thinking, I've just, yeah. So definitely I was a huge people pleaser, and I prefer to make everybody happy. Like, I prefer that, but it bumps up against my black and white, right is wrong thing quite often. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times the things that the people want you to do to make them happy, I'm like, well, that's not okay. That's a bad thing. So what do you do in that case, right? Anyway, that's a really long answer to that question. All right, Amy, I gave you plenty of time to think about your answer.
oh no, I mean I pretty much had my answer before. I was just
Oh, so why didn't you go?
because I wanted to be nice. I'm a people pleaser. No, I'm not.
Sure.
So Did you just say you are not?
You are not.
See, now you answered for me too. I think it
Okay.
for
Mm.
for me, I think it depends on the person.
Mm.
If it's somebody that I respect and, whatever, then yes, I want to try to be like a people pleaser and make them happy. But if it's
Huh.
somebody like I actually, if it's somebody that I really don't like or don't respect, I may actually try to do things the total opposite just to like be
No,
annoying.
I would never think that of you.
Just to like be a little
Pointy stick.
pointy stick.
You want to be the
Yeah.
Instigate.
So so I think I can go either way, but it depends on the
So maybe
person.
it's not that related to perfectionism, but I have noticed for me, depending on relationships I've been in, I had more stress or pressure to be a perfect person, whether it was a perfect girlfriend or the perfect companion or whatever it is in different relationships. And I mean, to
Mm,
me, that just says I'm a people pleaser. Like I'm, you know, and so I
yeah.
like, I think that what happened with that is it just brings out my perfectionism tendencies. And that's not healthy. And I recognize that. So I'm not in those relationships anymore. But I do think that they're somewhat tied together just a little bit
Yeah.
because nobody's perfect, no matter what.
Nobody is perfect. Nobody.
Yeah. That's so funny. That just kind of like hit a little like dink dink thing. Like I remember back obviously years ago when I was like dating people and stuff. You know, if you like friends of mine or like, you would hear people talking about like going out on a date and like what were they gonna eat? Like what were they gonna order? Because, they didn't want to order this food or that food or whatever. And I was like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah,
Like,
I
Order
think
whatever you want.
for that being a thing, like way back when,
yeah,
like people would be like, and I think there were even like sitcoms that joked about it, like you'd have to eat a
like order
salad
the
or something,
salad. Yeah. I'm
and
like,
then
no, no, no.
I know, but then I also discovered very quickly, like men don't like that. Like, if you sit down and order a big juicy steak, they're like, dang, like she
Damn.
can
Yeah.
eat.
Yeah, it's so funny. I haven't thought about that obviously for years because I haven't dated in years, but
How long
like
have you been married?
um we've been married. I don't know. Oh god, that's really terrible. I hope my husband doesn't
Oh
listen to this
no.
one. I don't remember how long. We've been together 25 years. We've been like between
Wow.
dating and marriage, we've been together 25 years. So yeah, it's been quite a long time. But yeah, I just remember thinking I was like they're gonna figure out you eat things other than lettuce eventually. Like, are we gonna pretend? I don't know. Maybe that's not perfectionism. Maybe that's just realism. I don't know. I don't know.
This is a good, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the whole topic, I think it can relate to everybody in a different way. I think we've all experienced it in some, form. Like whether it's we're hosting a party and we just want everything to be perfect,
Mhm.
Like I've done that before. Actually, the most recent time I hosted what I was trying to make a perfect party was my sister's 50th birthday. And everything was really perfect. Like I was like, woo, like this is pretty
I love
awesome. Like things
this.
are coming together. Like it was a surprise party. We had everything like ready. The weather was nice. And I ushered everybody out onto our back deck before she got there for a group photo. And luckily, the way my deck is built, it's like tall on one side and then it's built over a hill behind my house. So it's only about 6 inches high off the ground on one where it's hooked up to the house because the whole deck like sunk during the photo. And like, I mean, everything was going so great and it was such a good party and like everything was perfect. And then we're like, okay, everybody say cheese. And at the very moment the photographer took the photo, which we have a photo of this, the deck collapsed on that one side. And because we had like 30 people out there, I mean, it was like for a half second, total panic. And I just went like, okay, this is the most far thing from perfect that could happen. Like, really, this is it. Except for nobody got hurt. That could have been worse.
That's good.
So, but I don't know, like at that moment, I think I just like, again, I used my yoga training, my breathing, and I was like, okay, everybody back in, we'll get another picture inside, like, and we couldn't use the deck. Like that was it, no more deck. So we had to, we scrambled, we pulled chairs from other rooms and, we gave people plates and they were spread out all over the living room and the dining room and everywhere. And I mean, in the end, like it was fun and it was memorable and it was such a good lesson that, perfection is unattainable, even when you think you got it.
So I'm really like taking a trip down memory lane tonight, but speaking of perfectionism and parties, do you guys remember one of the first events that the three of us did together for work? And we were having all these people for an event and we ordered food for catering and we thought we were getting one thing. And we got totally.
It will forever go down as the party of meat and cheese.
Yeah, meat and cheese. Yeah.
I mean, in my mind, it was charcuterie.
Fine.
Yeah, it worked out fine. Yeah, nobody knew but us that it was supposed to be something else.
It was supposed to be like fancy cheese and charcuterie and crackers and and it was literally meat and cheese on a plate.
Yeah, it was like a deli tray.
There was a little miscommunication with the store who shall remain nameless.
Oh my God.
Great. It did fine. No one.
I know, and nobody complained, and it was great.
All got eaten.
Yeah. Lesson learned. And I do think also, hopefully, like this isn't true for everybody, and those people probably do need some counseling, but as we age, we do get less perfectionism because we realize like it's not the little details that matter. What matters is the experience or the feeling that you get from the experience. Not if the forks match or the prosciutto is rolled just perfectly.
Yeah. I feel like it's like the oh my gosh, I got the giggles now. Like the old people that go around just like farting. They're like, kind of screw it.
They don't care.
Everybody farts.
Yeah, and that is one of the joys of aging, I truly believe, is that it's much easier to, one, not be such a people pleaser and not worry so much about everything being perfect.
Yeah.
Because it can't always be perfect. It really can never be perfect.
Be perfect. Well, and again, it goes back to the original question to bring us all the way back around. Who is defining what perfect is anyway?
Well, that is so deep. Like honestly, like we could keep going for hours on that because as I was reading about perfectionism, another big component to that is when you allow other people's lives to influence your view of what your perfect life would be. And that's where like a lot of social media probably gets bad reviews. Thumbs down on that. Yeah.
Thumbs down.
And we just finished our Christmas. Did I say Christmas? Okay, holiday episode.
Yeah.
Festivus for the rest of us. We just finished our little holiday survival episode. So if you didn't listen to that, it's the previous one to this one. But honestly, like this is the time of year where perfectionism comes in big time.
Yeah.
So yeah. Don't worry if your pine cones aren't all completely uniform in your centerpiece. It'll be okay.
I know we're getting ready to wrap up, but if you think back, especially, and this is harder when you're in your 20s, but not impossible. If you think back to the most memorable or most fun or the best, let's say it is the holidays or parties or vacations or whatever stresses you out, rarely, if ever, are they the ones that were quote unquote perfect. Like
Yeah.
perfect
They're the ones that
is
come with the good stories.
right. Like, and yeah, yeah. Whole conversation
Speaking of
about
perfect,
perfect.
what is that noise in the background?
They're closing the garage door outside.
Oh,
Oh, that's perfect timing.
Perfect timing. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're good because we're almost wrapped up. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree. That's a
Right.
great statement, and it's a really good way to wrap up. Is like people will remember the fun and the camaraderie and the person turning 50. And yes, they're going to remember the deck collapsing, but they're going to laugh about it and they're going to remember the
Right.
party forever.
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. So if anybody wants to share their perfect imperfect or the most
Oh
perfect
yeah.
imperfect event or something that sticks with them, we would
The
love to hear it.
Yeah.
Imperfectly perfect.
Imperfectly
Perfect.
perfect.
Or perfectly imperfect.
Perfectly imperfect, right?
Perfectly
Or
imperfect.
imperfect. Yeah. One of those things. Yeah.
Practice over perfection
Yes. Progress.
Progress.
and progress.
Yes.
Get it
Progress
right,
and
Lara.
practice.
Practice and
Well,
progress.
yeah. Practice sounds yoga-y, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
Practice
yeah.
is yoga. Yeah.
Yes.
Progress is training and food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just headed toward wherever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of
Anyway.
imperfection, do we want to try and monkey chatter our way out of here?
Yeah. Let's do our imperfect,
Yeah.
perfect chant.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Count us
Who's doing
down,
the
Amy.
countdown, Lara? Go
Or
ahead.
somebody.
One. Monkey
Monkey
chatter.
chatter.
Monkey
Monkey
chatter.
chatter.
Who you hang
hang
with
with matters.
matters.
Oh, that was
And
truly perfect.
I still laugh
That was
that like
perfect.
the 1, 2, 3 countdown gets like silent. Like why do we do that every time? No matter
know,
who
I
does
don't
the
know.
countdown.
Let's
Okay.
do it 52 more times until we get it perfect.
Okay. All right. And we're out.
And we're out. Peace out.